Go ahead. Okay. We call the meeting order. This is the special meeting of the Goat Spring City Council, July 29th, 2001. Jen, will you call roll?
Mayor Goder. Mayor Pro Tem Woolman.
Here.
Councilor Davis.
Here.
Councilor Hershey.
Present.
Councilor Tausch. Here. Councilor Stepp. Here. Councilor Woodville. Here.
Report? You do. Thank you. Just so it's in the record. Everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I know everybody knows why we're here, but officially we're going to open the public hearing on plan item 09-20, and we're going to consider both the rezoning and the annexation. So all the comments will be, you get one chance to comment. I'm going to go through a couple of just general kind of rules on how we're going to engage today. We don't expect to finish. I'm going to be very candid. We expect to continue this public meeting to next week, the regular city council meeting, a week from tonight. We're going to do about 9:10.
Charlie, wait a second. It sounds like over in the auxiliary, they don't talk about.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Overflow. Okay.
Did you bring your?
Yeah. And then they dump them back.
Really great. Not yet, either Hannah or either Hannah or Bree will come give us a thumbs up when they have sound.
Okay. All right.
How will they know that it's not when it's on?
That is true.
Yeah, they know good stuff. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Okay, you got thumbs up.
Okay, all right. So picking up where I left off. This is, we're opening the public hearing, on both, my screens here, on planning item 09-20, consideration of the annexation and initial zoning rezoning of 15.818 acres to commercial CO district and planning and development PUD at 214 Center Drive. We're going to consider both matters together. We're not going to do separate hearings for each of the items. And we hope that we can get through this. We want to give everybody a chance to speak, but get through it in a reasonable time frame. First of all, before we get started, I would like each council member to indicate verbally that they have no conflicts, or if they do, to tell us what the conflicts are. Tony, would you start?
Certainly, I don't have any conflicts. I'm concerned about conflicts that are not legal, but go beyond for both sides. Probably just talking about that at the next meeting. Also, I'm going to be taking notes, Mr. Williams, just for questions for later.
That's
But
fine.
I'm paying attention to them.
So that's fine. Thanks. Doug?
I do not have any conflicts on this project.
I do not have any conflicts.
I do not have this.
I do not have any conflicts.
I initially, okay, I told you know, but I confirmed that they are all in the packet, so they're all available for all of us. So I do not have any conflicts.
Thank you. So the procedure that we're going to follow today is a little bit different than in the past when we have public hearings. We're not going to have council ask questions after the staff presentation, the developer's presentation. We're going to start out with the staff presentation. We're going to go to the developer's presentation. We estimate that'll take us about an hour, 15 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer. We'll probably take about a 5-minute break then, give her a chance to go to the restroom, do those things. We're going to go back and start taking public comments. The first thing I want to say is you can see we're socially distanced. We're trying to get as many people in here as we can. We have people in the municipal courtroom and they're on. That's why we stop for a minute to make sure they're on. They can hear us. And that's the best, we're trying to do the best we can, everybody here. But we want you to feel safe. We're asking everyone to follow the CDC guidelines as far as council members are wearing masks. I would, but then I have to talk more than other people tonight. So if anyone's uncomfortable with me not wearing one, let me know, and I'll be happy to put one on as well. If you don't feel safe in here because of the number of people, this is in this room or the other room, you're free to go home and to join the meeting by Zoom. When we take public comments, we're going to take 10 public comments from people that are here at the City Hall and 10 public comments from people on the Zoom. Everybody's going to be limited to 3 minutes. And sometimes we let people wander beyond that, but because of the number of comments we expect, of course, in this hearing, we're going to control it strictly. Alyssa is going to be watching the time, and she will signal if you're done, and if you don't stop, I will ask you to stop. And can ask you to be courteous to everyone, courteous to the time, and to stay within the 3 minutes. Jen Newton is going to, if you haven't already signed up, make sure you have. We're going to take in order to sign up. Alyssa, Jen, are you watching the order on the Zoom? Okay. Yeah. So the order for those that are participating remotely, and you raise your hand when we get into public comments, don't do it before that. As we get into that, and Jen Newton will try to get those in the order you raise your hand, and we'll try to go through that process. Again, Hannah's back over here if you haven't signed up. She has the sign-up sheets. If you're in the other room, for those people who are in the municipal courtroom, and your name is called, please proceed as quickly as possible in here. We'll give a minute or so for you to be here. If it takes very long, we'll call the next person, and then we'll take you in the next order. We're not going to skip, we'll just skip over you by one person. Anything else I'm missing here? So what we're going to do is tonight, we're going to go to 9:10 roughly for public comment, and then we're going to take a break. We're going to continue this public hearing to the city council meeting next Thursday, if we can talk as 4th, is that right? August 5th. And we'll do a motion for that. We're going to break at 9:10, as close to 9:10 as we can for the public comments. If you're signed up tonight, make sure that if you don't want to be here, let them know, but otherwise, pick up the order on the 4th with what we stopped tonight, including people on the Zoom thing. Or if you're not going to be here next week and you went to the Zoom, let them know that you were signed up in the room at the beginning of the meeting. We'll have to talk about how to handle that. Okay? Any questions about procedure from anybody? All right, Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for Tim. I just wanted to follow up on that. This is a public hearing for both annexation and zoning. Those are statutory processes that we need to follow. We are opening those hearings to debate comment collectively. I know that's a question I received from members of the public raised young, to make sure that you guys can comment on the entire application through this process when you do comment. The other thing is that we were trying really hard. We're doing this hybrid, so please bear with us. We're doing the best we can. This is a new world for all of us, and we're trying to get through it. We want to make sure that we hear from everybody, but there's going to be some bobbles. There just is. So bear with us, and I appreciate that. And I think Trent's going to start us off with the staff presentation.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Wellman, the City Council. Trent Hyatt with the Community Development Department. So give me 1 second, I'm going to share my screen here. Like we can all see it, you see it on your end? Okay, great. This is the 480 Donegan proposal, which is the annexation and rezoning of planning file number 09-20. Proposal was for the annexation of 214 Center Drive, which is a 15.818 acre parcel. It includes a rezoning, which is an initial rezoning of the property upon annexation by the city, to planned unit development for 12.285 acres. That is to include the Homeless Business Park that exists, for the PUD, which is a site that currently is used for agricultural uses and storage, but is proposed for significant development moving forward. The southwestern 3.5 acres of the parcel is proposed for commercial district, which is the location of the existing commercial business center. That has approximately 2 14,000 square foot buildings that currently house a daycare, an office, contractor yards, storage, warehousing uses. No changes are proposed on this portion of the property. I also do want to note that the current request is not a development proposal. It is certainly an initial annexation and rezonings that will outline densities and uses that are permitted on the larger 12.285 acre parcel, but a future major site and architectural plan review will be required prior to any development to occur there. So I'm going to go over some of the aspects of the proposal on the planning and development piece of the property. I'm also going to outline some of the changes that have occurred since the Planning and Zoning Commission considered this last in May of this year. Currently, the proposal includes 332 mixed residential units. That is a decrease of 28 from the prior proposal. That includes 279 multifamily units, which is a decrease of 48. The applicant is proposing that a minimum of 10%, 28 of those units are deed restricted at 90% of area median income, or 20% at 100% area median income. That would be a number of 56 units. The applicant has increased the number of townhomes from 20 to 40. They are also offering 35 of those 40 townhomes for sale, 5 of which would be deed restricted at a sale price that's negotiated with the city, and all of those 35 would be resident occupied. That also proposes 13 live work studios, a 2,000 square foot restaurant that would be open to the public, 12,000 square foot clubhouse and pool for the residents of the development, and in all, that includes 14 total buildings, and that is an increase of 2 buildings from the previous proposal, as they have converted 2 larger multifamily buildings to 4 town sets of 5 townhomes. The applicant is intending to restrict the use of natural gas on this property so that electricity from the city's electric system is used. Some other aspects of the development include approximately 2.5 acres of open space. The applicant is willing to open their top lot to the public. There are other open space area lawns that are included in the common open space. The 2.5 acres of landscaping that's proposed for the project, the applicant is intending to restrict that landscaping to drought-resistant xeriscaping and conservation-type fixtures that would limit the use of the irrigation water proposed for that. The applicant is proposing 579 parking spaces on site, based on the reduction in the number of uses, or the number of units, 566 are required. That does not include approximately 50 on-street spaces along Storm King Road and Donegan Road that the applicant also proposes. Emergency evacuation has been a big conversation throughout the review of this application. The applicant is proposing to provide $40,000 to the city to plan for emergency evacuation as well as to pay for 20% of the cost related to any construction associated therewith. Obviously, I'm sure you've all heard a little bit about this property, that the applicant has also entered into conversations for the purchase of the mall property to the south. In conjunction with that, they also would like to donate an acre of that parcel to the city for future fire station construction. They would also like to provide direct access for this development to Highway 6 and 24. I also want to point out that there is a requirement in the revised draft annexation agreement that was included in your packet tonight that requires an amendment of the PUD, of the mall PUD, prior to any construction of phase 2 of this development. And we can get into some details of that next week if need be. But the revised draft development, or annexation agreement rather, is included as an attachment. And all of these changes are either outlined in the supplemental site plan that was submitted from the applicant or in that annexation. So the annexation process is outlined in Colorado Revised Statutes, Section 3112-107, as well as Section 7060-40D of the city's development code. Most of the time, annexations are needed to obtain services from any given jurisdiction. In this circumstance, we're talking about water and electric. It is a voluntary request that is done via a petition from any property owner that meets certain requirements. One of those being 1/6 contiguity, adjacency to the city limits. In this instance, there is approximately 2/6. The city must determine and analyze the positive and potential negative impacts of that annexation, solicit public input, and negotiate terms with the applicant via the annexation agreement that we mentioned previously. City Council also passes a resolution showing that they are in substantial compliance with the requirements of the Colorado Revised Statutes, and then conduct a series of public hearings, which we are beginning tonight. In terms of the code, Section 706040D outlines that the city shall make sure that an annexation conforms to applicable state statutes, be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and evaluate some of those impacts such as traffic, open space, active recreation facilities, infrastructure capacity, and compatibility with city goals and policies. Just to discuss some of the major issues or concerns associated with development. With any development, it's always, one is always road and traffic and generation. Now, I wanted to see an asterisk there, but this development is anticipated to generate approximately 2,188 weekday trips based on the number of units proposed. Now, that number has not been updated since the revision or reduction in the number of units, so we would expect that to be slightly lower. That would recognize 144 AM peak hour trips and 177 PM peak hour trips. Those trips will be distributed throughout the neighborhood, mainly to Donegan Road, opposite Chaparral Circle. They intend to propose a full movement access there. Storm Bean Road, opposite Center Drive, with a full movement access that exists today, but instead making that a four-way stop. And along Highway 6 and 24. Again, the new proposal includes direct access there too. However, the applicant has also proposed acceleration lanes at Donegan Road, very far to the east of the lot. The county has told the city that they will require the transfer of any ownership of those adjacent roads to the city prior to accepting any changes there too. And of course, CDOT, still does have an evaluation that they can do of this property to see if they would require any additions in addition there. Bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Again, of course, increased bicycle and pedestrian traffic from this development. We have two major schools that are adjacent, one directly across the street to the west, and there is existing commercial activity and significant housing in the area. Relative infrastructure is lacking severely. The applicant proposes some improvements to include bicycle and pedestrian paths, on-street parking and related buffers, and a connection to the existing city bicycle lanes and pedestrian network along Donegan Road to the east. They propose a sidewalk along Mel Ray Road along the west side, as well as future connectivity to the Gable Roofs site. Potential viewshed impacts of the built environment are very significant relative to the current seasonal grazing that occurs on the property. However, it is staff's opinion that it's more appropriate to evaluate those view impacts based on the current Garfield County commercial limited zoning, as well as the special use permit that currently exists for the grazing portion of the property today. Outside of construction, staff does not expect any adverse noise impacts. 2011 comprehensive plan identified, map 2.1 identifies this portion of the city as a secondary commercial center that is targeted for future growth and development. It also identifies this site as mixed use and also encourages sub-area plan to determine the mix of uses and development types therein. The purple on the map that you see there is what identifies that. Here's goals that are supported by this application include sustainable economic development, maintaining the city as a regional center, preserving our small town character, addressing transportation needs, directing development in areas that are easy to serve, providing housing opportunities for the entire community, supporting the social diversity, and preserving natural resources. City's rezoning criteria are outlined in section 706040A3F. This is only for the CO portion of the property. We'll get to the PUD next. The one is consistency with the city's comprehensive plan and code. It is clearly consistent with the 2011 comprehensive plan that I just outlined, and the code has specific design standards that are applicable that are intended to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. Two, consistency with the proposed purpose, statement for any given zoning district. The business park is consistent with the CEO district that we have in the city, as it provides a transition between a mix of uses and/or residential districts, as well as larger industrial districts or uses in the area. And it requires special review for higher intensity uses, to include fabrication, manufacturing, or retail shopping centers. 3, consistency with the purpose statement. Further, to continue on that, the city recognizes that there are well-established neighborhoods in the area, such as Western Hills and single-family homes along Mel Ray Road to the east. So we reviewed this application in such a manner that, to try to limit significant commercial development adjacent to those existing uses. The larger scale development that's proposed is adjacent to some of the existing commercial retail auto sales that are to the west of the project. Additionally, we've looked at various site-specific building types, and then this is going into some of the PUD standards, I'd like to say. So, we try to maintain a smaller mass and scale of building and use intensity adjacent to some of the existing single-family homes. That's why you'll see some of the townhomes along Donegan Road. Also, there are contextual height zones that are included in the proposed PUD, and that would be limiting those heights to, what a typical single-family home residential district would allow in the city, such as 27 feet. And then as you follow the grade south and closer to the existing mall site, buildings get slightly taller in different zones, for 43 feet and 50 feet. And as well as those taller buildings are more internal. Also, the applicant is proposing wide buffer zones along some of those existing roads. 3, substantial changes warrant a zoning change. The annexation and future development of the property is a substantial change to the neighborhood that warrants the rezoning. CO zone directs our district is similar to the county zoning that currently exists, and the PUD zoning is warranted to help manage the anticipated change. 4, development intensity is not expected to create significant adverse impacts. There's no additional development, of course, proposed within the CO zone portion of the property. The proposal outlines specific design standards, such as, again, the location of housing types, height zones, setbacks, and all site improvements to try to address some of the expected impacts. Some additional specific PUD approval criteria is outlined in section 7060B3S3. 1 being applicability of the general zoning district or rezoning standards, which we addressed. 2, it addresses a unique situation or provides substantial benefit or incorporates innovative design, layout, or configuration for a proposal. And we do feel that the PUD provides for that innovative design and acknowledges the transition from the existing neighborhood to development that currently exists in the area and/or is anticipated for the mall site in the future. A PUD seems to be a better way of accomplishing the goals of both the comprehensive plan as well as future development. 2, meet the applicable standards of the code. Again, any that are not addressed in the PUD would be subject to general code requirements. And the PUD 4 provides residential uses and varied types of housing. Of course, this development includes townhomes, multifamily apartments, as well as the workforce units, all of which include an affordability aspect. And 4, the PUD provides residential uses with various types of housing and densities. Again, 332 mixed unit types, and that is a density of 27 approximately dwelling units per acre, which is a reduction from the 29.3 that were proposed before with the various uses. The city received comments from numerous review agencies. Those comments were included and all of your attachments in the plan. We've addressed a lot of the issues that staff went through during that time. As well as we received significant public comments. Most of those comments, the very vast majority of those were in opposition to the proposal. Hundreds of pages of thoughtful information from folks in the community to address issues such as traffic, emergency egress, density, the lack of open space, the city's growth and development direction generally, various building heights and their view shed impacts to schools, quality of life issues, parking, water availability and use, as well as residential unit types that are proposed. Planning and Zoning Commission considered this application at 3 meetings, one on March 23rd, another on April 27th, and last on March 25th. They recommended denial of action 1, which is the annexation. However, they did provide some recommendations to the applicant, and that would include a conversation for the city to better understand the makeup of our small town moving forward. That they wanted to point out that a shortage of housing units in the city does not necessarily mean that we have the capacity for. The comp plan identifies annexation of the subject parcel as a high priority, but requests for other properties as well, and that they wanted to point out that other proposals have been denied for similar concerns as are related to this property. The proposal does not address the comp plan's goal of small town character. The off-site transportation and pedestrian improvements are needed in this area regardless of the current development proposal. The need to address life safety egress issues before the development is a huge request. The density of the proposal is too high, and the applicant should consider development in phases. The site should be developed in conjunction with the redevelopment of the mall site. Proposal of this size should have direct access to Highway 6. They asked to remove the false gable roof connections between town hall units. Consider scaling down density and off-site improvements accordingly. Revise the city's comp plan before adding additional large-scale development. They also considered the rezoning, recommending denial, with also providing consideration for that. Reducing the project density, providing story poles to identify building heights, removing on-street parking, requiring a minimum of 20% of the units are owner-occupied and meet 10% minimum for attainable housing. Completing evacuation planning and implementation before adding density, providing space for a new fire station, further consider expense to the city of taking over the new road sections, providing direct access to Highway 6, and redeveloping this parcel in conjunction with the mall site, further study the traffic impacts, consider parkland dedication for open space instead of being in lieu of, consider reducing surface parking via supplemental building parking, and to solve evacuation egress issues before adding congestion. Section 706030G1D of the Development Code allows you to approve with conditions, deny or continue the applications. Staff recommends approval of action item 1, the annexation, which is outlined in ordinance 2021-08 with the findings and conditions that are outlined on pages 1 and 2 of the attached City Council listing motions document. We also recommend approval of action 2, the rezoning, which is outlined in ordinance 2021-09 with the findings and conditions outlined on pages 2 through 3 of the attached City Council listing. Thank you for your time. Thanks. Can I ask a technical question, Charlie? Sorry about this. Is this information for people available, like your presentation online or something?
Yes. Everything that's going on here tonight is on Zoom as well as on YouTube. So there are multiple paths to be able to watch. And obviously the Zoom link, the public can participate in public comment as well.
Or see this presentation. Again.
Or see this presentation will be out there on YouTube to watch again between now and the next couple of meetings.
Thank you.
You have a good way to make the presentation. Yes. Go to the podium. You would just for our edification and introduce yourself.
Sure, my name is Barry Rosenberg, principal of R2 Partners. I'd first like to say thank you for having this special meeting. Appreciate your time, and everyone's time is very valuable. And I'm happy to be here today to hear a little bit from the Demos family and from my father. And I think we have an opportunity tonight in reviewing this project to do something that I think will have a really positive impact on the people in response to a major community need that we see. The question that we need to look at is how do we create a model for housing in Glenwood Springs that is consistent with the city's long-term vision. This was our goal when we started. We've been working with the staff for over 12 months now on this project. We've had, as you pointed out, there were 3 meetings with P&Z. We've had multiple meetings with the public as well. And from where we started this presentation, this project has evolved. I think Trent did a very good job of kind of outlining how this project has evolved, and we could talk a little bit further. I'm going to have some other people talk about a lot of the things that we've addressed that were some of the comments that were made by P&Z, and kind of, again, being very responsive to the community itself. I don't think I need to iterate the various points that were made in the 2019 Regional Housing Study. I think we all know that housing is a major concern in the valley and in the city. I think it is interesting to note that there was recently the Northwest COGS 2021 Migration to the Mountain Report. One of the comments that I thought was interesting is this is not a housing crisis, but a housing emergency. When we look at this project, I think it's important to look at a couple of things. This is about the entire Glenwood Springs community. This is about providing housing for the middle-income people in this community. And further, this is about housing for people to live and work in Glenwood Springs. As I'm sure you all know, Glenwood Springs employs about 12,000 people daily. There's over 2,300 people that commute into Glenwood Springs every day. I think it's important because this is really about living and working in this community. It's interesting as we talk to some of the life safety groups in the city, including your hospital that employs over 1,200 people, but they're looking to have at least 50% of those people to live in the city of Glenwood Springs, which they're having a very difficult time achieving. So again, thinking about life safety issues, nurses, doctors being able to respond to emergencies and actually live in this community. We've talked to the schools. It was interesting to note that when the schools actually offer a job to a teacher and the teacher accepts the job, they don't assume that the teacher is actually going to have that job until they actually find housing. And what they're finding is about 50% of those people, after accepting the job, are now for not taking the job because of housing issues. So this really affects everything within the community. I also think it's important because there are infrastructure needs that we're really looking to address, the roads, and also fire safety, which is something that clearly should be in everyone's concern. Obviously, safety is very important to anything that you guys consider or do. Glenwood Springs has always been a very inclusive community, which is part of what makes it special. The city's comprehensive plan states that the small town character, quote, is our most significant goal. While often elusive, and this is a quote from your comments, while often elusive to define, small town character is actually less about the size of the town and more about its character. It goes on to state that the neighborhoods should be walkable, talkable, with active and engaged citizenry, with essential services and many amenities within walking distance. I'm sure you've all been to Dunnigan Road today. There's no sidewalk, there's no bike path, and if you've watched kids, which I have, walking home from school along Dunnigan Road, and when a car comes by, what they end up having to do is literally walk into a ditch. Seeing cars basically parked on the side. I think what we're talking about here, and again, the vision that's up there today, is talking about sidewalks, bike lanes, front porches, people connecting, as opposed to what you see today along Dunnigan Road, and off-street parking. The other thing I'd like to point out, which is what we've tried to do, because we've heard a lot about the small town character. And I think it is an important thing, and it's something that why Glenwood is what Glenwood is about. And so there's a lot of things that we've also seen, you can see it here. Not only are we going to two-story for-sale townhouses along the street, but these are two-story townhouses we've actually lowered from where we started. So they fit in with the buildings that are already have been built on the other side of Storm King along Gummigan. And I'm sure you're aware, there's several of those townhouses that are, again, similar in size, similar in scale. One of the comments was made about the Gable Roofs. In getting rid of the multifamily, we've obviously eliminated the Gable Roofs. And again, we've tried to take some nods in character from some of the design that's been going on within the city itself. It's interesting to note that from 2019 to 2021, the median home value in Glenwood Springs has increased $200,000. That's not the price, but the increase that's occurred. The majority of the population cannot afford to buy a home. As you look at our project, you need to consider the public benefit for the entire community of Glenwood Springs. A lot of items have been talked about: pollution, traffic, fire evacuation. That's why we think it's going to be very important that you have more people living and working and walking. Being able to walk to what hopefully becomes the redevelopment of the mall, and interconnecting, and that is a big part of what I think was the original vision from the city itself. Walking to restaurants. I think, as Trent pointed out, that one of the things that's important is that the city professional staff has clearly come out and stated that this project does not impact health, safety, and welfare of the community, and does provide several benefits. I think they've gone through most of them here, so I don't know that I need to reiterate them. But I do think it's important when you have professional teams who are looking at this from a traffic safety, which is what they do for a living. It's important to understand their impact, and that's why we've been working so closely with them. Fire evacuation is a primary concern. And I think it's important to note the fire chief of Glenwood Springs has been working on a complete wildfire assessment and evacuation plan. It's been an ongoing effort by the city staff. I'm sure you're aware of that again. And it is something that this needs to be addressed irrespective of our project. It's clearly an important issue, and we get it. I think that one of the things that is important is that we look at being part of this as a stakeholder in trying to help to solve that problem. And I think several of the things that, as you can see, again, addressing the comments that have been made, we're trying to address that. I think Trent kind of hit on some of those things, but I'd just like to really make sure we understand. One is, you have an outdated fire station in West Glenwood. As part of your strategic plan is to build a new one. We're offering property so that they could build it. This project is also providing impact fees for the fire department. For the fire chief, it's over $377,000. These are important funds for them to be able to afford to build a new fire station. And also, I think it's important, and it wasn't mentioned, is our property, irrespective of whether we own the mall or not, has egress rights through the mall. And we would be open looking at the professional recommendations of providing emergency access through the mall, assuming there isn't other access that's coming through the mall. That could be separate from any redevelopment plan that happens within the mall itself. We also have suggested, and I think one of the things that came out, we've had multiple meetings with the fire chief, is that the fire evacuation issue is a multi-jurisdictional issue. You've got CDOT, you've got the county, you've got the city, these are multiple roads, and then one of the things is there needs to be an overall comprehensive plan. One of the things that we've suggested that we do is that we would contribute $40,000 for professional fees to have a lot of the different people that we work with come in, help the city to help develop that overall plan. It's my understanding, I haven't been here, but there's been a lot of much better coordinated effort during the recent mudslides that have occurred that I think have minimized the impact of traffic in Glenwood Springs and evacuation. So again, I think it's kind of at least the start or an example that the key to looking at this, which again is a very important issue, is having an overall plan, which is not yet fully in place. I was gonna talk a little bit about the changes that we've made, Trent hit on them, but again, I think responding to the P and Z, responding to comments, we've reduced the density, we've increased the number, we've actually added, I should say, the for sale products, which is not something we typically do, but clearly was something in response to a lot of the comments and needs that we've heard. We are 100% parking our property on site. So again, by reducing that, adding parking, the original plan, we had 10% of our parking, which is something that you do typically allow in the city. We remove that. And in lieu, we are continuing to still provide that off-street parking that would now be open to the neighborhood. It would not be part of us fulfilling our requirement for our parking for our project overall. We have devoted a certain amount of public space. And again, in our original plan, we were not necessarily going to open that up to the public. We heard a lot of comments, and the idea that we have these public spaces, children's playgrounds, as part of what we're doing, that would now be fully open to the public. We would also create, again, just kind of, these are early imageries, but we think the ability to walk from our project all the way through to what, again, we hope is a redevelopment of the mall and making that connection. Imagine living here, walking on these streets, riding your bike, walking to an actual restaurant. That's part of what we envision for this community and what we're talking about here. I just want to kind of talk about real quickly as we look at the model for the future. I think this is a great opportunity because it's an annexation and because some of the things that we're looking at and a lot of the things that we've kind of been working with, again, with your staff. We're going to be looking at defensible landscaping so that to the extent that there are fires, that we would have defensible so that it would not jump over to our property. We are working towards the net zero landscaping, which is one of the things that Trent had hit on here. And further, as you know, which wasn't added, is that we do have an irrigation ditch here today on this property. We're in discussions with the city on that as well, and that's the ditch that we would use to be watering our common areas. We kind of looked at it, it was kind of interesting, within your single-family homes in the city overall, on average, the lot sizes are about 15,000 square feet, and we looked at the water usage, which I know is a big concern. And we've seen where the water usage goes from 1.5 million gallons a day in the winter to over 5 million gallons a day in the summer. And what we found is that when you look at what the single-family homes overall, our project is 20 times. So for each one of our units, each one of those houses that's watered, would be 20 of our actual units. So again, this is not to critique what's happening with the single-family homes, but I think to recognize that water is a precious resource, and when you look at projects like this, and the ability to conserve water as part of it, I think it's an important component to be thinking about, again, as you look at the overall issues facing the city. Again, we would be working on all electric projects. As you know, the city uses renewable energy, so this would all be renewable energy on the project. We would have, as a requirement, 20% of our residents would be owner-occupied, working, living in Glenwood Springs. As was talked about on the affordable housing, as you know, what we're proposing here goes beyond the current statute or mandate that you guys recently had passed. And this was in response to a proposal from the Housing Commission in which they have recommended this project, suggesting that we do one of two things, and we are now incorporating what the Housing Commission has recommended. And as we mentioned, this idea of providing these for sale products and working again with the city where you guys would buy a certain number of those units, and then you would have them as part of an affordable housing for sale product, which again, I think could be a new program for the city, hopefully becomes a model for other things. Think about this, and we think that this project again becomes a catalyst for the redevelopment of the mall. And it also provides, I think as Trent had talked about, we do a lot of projects, there's a lot of urban planning, and I think again, when you look at your original vision, was how do you create a transition from single-family homes to a commercial project like a mall? And so again, starting with two-story townhouses consistent with what's already there on Dunnigan, and slowly, again, by the way, the site slopes 20 feet when you start on Dunnigan. So when you get to the mall, so when you look at these heights, and our team will kind of show that to you a little bit, you can see how these overall really they almost reach two-story buildings all the way through the project because of the slope of the property from Dunnigan all the way to the mall. But again, these are good urban planning principles that we've tried to utilize in order to make that transition. And again, consistent with what you guys put together in your comprehensive plan. Just real quickly, we'll really hit on it, but the road improvements that we're talking about are road improvements that we're hearing from everybody are necessary road improvements, again, irrespective of our project. We're talking about close to $4 million of road improvements. This is upgrading Mel Ray, upgrading Dunnigan, the bike lanes, the sidewalks, and all the things. And again, the team that's been working with us on this project will walk through that with you. It's also providing over $3.5 million in impact fees. Those are dollars that go to the schools, to the parks, and to the fire department. As we've mentioned, providing the new fire station for West Glenwood. And again, safety is a #1 priority. And I think as you look at some of the things and how that we're addressing that, these are the things that we're looking to do and working again with the professional team to make sure that we properly and adequately address them. Growth is occurring. We can pretend to stop it, or we can determine the best model forward to work with the growth, to provide middle-income housing and still maintain what preserves Glenwood Springs' small-town character and makes this city special. Our design is not just our vision. This is a plan that we've been working with your professional staff on for over 12 months. I think you have a great opportunity to use this development as a model for future development that would be consistent with the city's overall comprehensive plan. And I thank you for your time. I'd like to have, before we turn it over to our team, just some quick comments. One would be from Floyd Demos, who is, as you know, the Demos family, the current owners of the property. So if you come up with him.
Thank you. I've been up here before, but I'm not walking as good as I used to. So, but anyway, good to see all of you people. Thank you. I guess as you know, I'm a member of the family that owns the land between the West Glenwood Mall, and we've owned this land for 60 years, believe it or not. It's zoned commercial, and over those years, we've been asked many, many times to sell part of that land. As an example, a very giant retailer wanted all of our land, and they wanted it to the point they wanted to buy our 2 office buildings, tear them down in order to fit in what they were doing. They consequently went somewhere else, but we said no. We did say to Marty, to Marvin and Barry Rosenberg, the R2 partners, probably about 2 years ago, we met each other and realized that there might be something that would happen, even though it's in this past 1 year that it's all happened. We found when we researched that they had a proven track record, the expertise to develop our land, and we thought that this was very important because they're very responsible people. So over the 2 years, we found them to be very straightforward. It's very much appreciated. And we believe that R2 has made significant concessions, and their plan would be a great contribution to Glenwood. We believe that it really is going to be positive for providing much-needed housing. And I'd like you, and you've all done it before, but if you would go back to the city's comprehensive plan, open it up to page 41 and 46, and read what that comprehensive plan says should be done with our properties. And that's exactly what we're doing. Again, I thank you very much.
Next slide.
I'd like to, what? No, thank you. The other thing I want to mention, I'm going to use my father is that R2 is actually a family-owned business. Family that business that we've had for over 61 years is called Town Properties. It was really R to the power of two. And the idea was about my father empowering the rest of our family to live up to the legacy that he had set for us in the development. And if you look back at all the things that he's done, we primarily own everything we've developed over the last 60 years. They're all maintained to a Class A project. And we've clearly been very integral parts of the community, not just in Ohio, but also here in Colorado. We've been out here for 40 years and living up to that legacy. And I thought it would be helpful just for my father, if he could, for just 2 seconds, just talk about that. Pardon.
See if I keep coming up to speak with me, yeah. We get into a situation, get involved into it, financially and personally. As a result, we have a track record. We have something.
I'm sorry, we can't hear over there, so if you could lean in a little more to the mic, I'd appreciate it.
Whenever we ask for something, look at the total of what we're asking, how it affects us, how it affects the community, which is more important. We look at it as a team of people that work together. And it's worked. And as a result, we had a situation where we're able to go back to the same, either landowners or communities and so forth, to explain what we've done, have them understand it, and be able to see. So we've had a very successful team of people for a number of years. A lot of the same people, we dust them off so we can do the current ideas, but we all work together, and we had we're really proud of the fact that what we say we're going to do, we do. And we can show you that in many ways. I'm proud of Harry and my others, relationship with people. We had hearings. One of the things that comes out is we finish the hearing. Usually, people that we're talking to say, do stay with, do grant kind of zoning you want, kind of you want, call it business you want, because we want to know that we're dealing with somebody that we can call at any time, day or night, rather than understand and straighten out whatever they think is working. One of the most valuable things we have is the track record we have with spending and producing. Impressed with all the different things that you talked about, discussed with the team here. Seems like we're very much in sync. What we want to accomplish, what we need to accomplish, and how it's going. You need to know that there's big questions, understanding or misunderstanding. The team is varying this group. This is your phone. This is an activity. This is an opportunity. Not just a one-off type situation. The reason that our company has been around for so many years is because we can show and present our track record to people that we have a mid and long-term goal. The goal is not to get in and get out with a bunch of promises and not perform. Our goal is to develop a group that grow by performance and okay, anyway, very proud of my kids. To start the I, if you will, pledge allegiance with something old fashioned. We all went to grade school, that's the way we used to start the day, with the pledge of allegiance. And we should do it now, and we can only use it with extremely a little bit brief and emotional. All these are the things we're doing together. We think we're doing the right things for each other and the right things for the community. So we're now to it. That's what it's all about. Working together and making a better life for all of us. Thank you very much for taking the time, listening to us. Let's hope we can work together. I know we can. If there's anything that's on your mind that we haven't talked about or did be straight out about, bring out easily, just give us a call, night or day. Work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to turn it over to their online, up to HCM, which is the architect of this project. And Jen, I don't know if you know how to, which is, they're on the, I see them on the thing there.
Hi. Is it Miguel?
Miguel, and go ahead.
Matthew, I'm sorry.
Matthew, sorry.
Hi, good evening. My name is Matthew. I'm pleased to be here to walk through the project. I'll try to be brief. I believe Trent and Barry did an excellent job of, doing our job as a designer to kind of talk through the concept. So again, like I said, I'll try to keep this brief. 480 Donegan is located in West Glenwood. In this image that you see on the screen, we're actually north is upside down. What you see in the top of the sheet is the south. And what I think this image definitely shows is the relationship of the context to our site, which is in red over in the lower right-hand corner. I think what's always been important to Barry and to a lot of the concerns of the community is that sense of presence of Red Mountain within the valley. And so as we look at the design process, we looked at strategies to preserve and enhance views towards Red Mountain. You can also see in this view that we are really close to Route 70 and Highway 6. We're within 800 feet of the front of the mall, which is right at Highway 6. I'm going to flip the orientation around. In this close-up view, aerial view, just for context, Donegan Road is to the north, Storm King here is on the west. Our site that we're talking about in the proposed development of community is within this red bounded area. It is located just outside of the city of Glenwood Springs, as dashed in the yellow line there. The community that we're putting forward, the 480 Donegan community, is sitting in land area of approximately 12.28 acres. It is a transitional or a neighborhood that's going to be a community of diverse housing that's going to serve as a transect between the Glenwood Mall, the commercial core along Route Highway 6, and the single family communities uphill along Donegan Road and to the north. Other elements of context, we do have the Two Rivers Community School to the west and office buildings on Lot 1, which is a part of the annexation and rezoning to the southwest corner. And again, Barry alluded to this earlier, but the topography is constant and steady, and it goes downhill. And from Donegan Road down to the mall, it's approximately 20 feet of drop to the mall. Just in context, Lot 1 is in the pink, and Lot 2, which is the PUD proposed zoning area and also the development of the community, is the larger parcel there. Both of these are part of the annexation. The Lot 1, as described earlier, is in compliance with the CO zoning. And then again, to really craft the community and make this into a community that creates a transect from north to south, from single family to commercial, we're relying on the PUD to give us some flexibility, but also to give control to how we design and shape it. Those tools to design and shape are within the submission, the annexation and rezoning submission. This is a screenshot of that. But there are many tools that we are looking at the existing city ordinance for inspiration, such as the common open space area. We are in compliance with some of the residential standards there. And then really where we're really tailoring the tools is, again, to think of this community as a transition from single family to the mall. We're really tailoring our building heights to allow for kind of a lower scale along Donegan, where we're highlighted in yellow, to multifamily that sits a little taller on the south side, and again, downhill of Donegan Road. So we're using those tools to help guide what those heights are going to be. And how we've defined those terms are also based on the ordinance. So as we threw out some elevation or building heights, we're actually measuring from, in a typical condition of the blue and the green areas, from the lowest side, which is the downhill side or the back side of some of these buildings. So the height is a tricky thing to describe in this process, because we do have a uphill short side and a downhill low side or tall side. The illustrative landscape plan, what's a good thing about this plan is it really starts to reference how we're building community. At the heart of this diverse housing community, we're looking at a lawn space, a common amenity space that sits between a clubhouse that has direct visual access up Chaparral to Donegan, but also is framed by multifamily buildings that have entrances and views into that amenity space. We believe that, creating these opportunities to have the community come together, find chance opportunities to meet, play, socialize, will definitely enhance the sense of community for this development. At the same time, we're being very cognizant of our context. We've positioned the northern edge along Donegan as townhouses. We've created small sticks of townhouses that are set back considerably from the street edge, and we're providing a front yard condition as well as street trees, sidewalk, and the bike lane along Donegan, of which none of that exists today. So really enhancing the civic nature of Donegan, as well as providing that infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists from the school to neighborhoods to the east. And in addition, we're also looking at creating some landscape buffers around the edge to help transition this development to the adjacent neighborhoods. Again, just kind of want to point out, going back to the main entrance or the ceremonial entrance from Chaparral, we wanted to create an intersection there that descends down the hill, but from the top of it, and we'll see this in some of the views, creates a shared perspective view of Red Mountain in the background. So as you're standing on Donegan, you will have you'll be able to visually see the clubhouse in the foreground, but over that and beyond is the Red Mountain. So you have that great sense of orientation both within the community and outside of the community. Again, this is an update, a different way of displaying the development of the community, and this starts to illustrate the various building types. I'm just going to walk through it really quickly. As I said before, we're applying the townhouses, the smaller housing typology along Donegan, a little bit more family oriented. We're tucking under those houses the parking, as we'll see in the section shortly. Again, the clubhouse and the restaurant are sitting at the core of this community, framed by multifamily buildings, B1 and B2, that are surface parked to the sides. And then looking at building C1, C2 as a multifamily building that transitions down the hill. So they have a high side that sits along this promenade that goes east-west, a continuation of Center Drive. So our secondary access point from Storm King is in through Center Drive, and that transitions into this promenade that connects to the open space. And again, these buildings C1 and C2 help transition and have frontage onto that promenade. And then building D sits at the corner. It offers a diversity of housing types within it, but especially the live work units that we're applying on the ground floor side facing Center Drive. These are units that are really going to introduce the opportunity for entrepreneurs into this community, into Glenwood, and has a synergy with the existing office buildings just to the south of Center Drive. So we thought that was a great opportunity to create that affordable opportunity for that entrepreneur in the future. I know these are small, but it's a big site. On the west or the page left of these sections, and both of these sections, the top section is cut to the west through the commercial property to the south, lot 1, and the second section is cut from Dunnigan through the clubhouse or adjacent to the clubhouse to the mall site. But what you see in this section, what's common is the 2-story townhouse has frontage over to Dunnigan Road. So we've brought the scale of this house down. Again, the grades are transitioning downhill to page right or to the mall or the highway. And that gave us the ability to tuck parking in and under. So great convenience for those homes. And as the site continues to drop down, we are introducing the taller buildings on the downhill side. So again, slope drops down, but we are transitioning this community to taller buildings closer to the commercial areas. And one can only imagine with the redevelopment of Glenwood Springs Mall, these would be of comparable scale to the future kind of town center opportunities that await the connectivity between this community and the future of the mall site. But having these taller buildings downhill, you can see there's a kind of a height that's not pushed up above the townhouses facing on Dunnigan. So that view, the homes uphill are not negatively impacted by the height of these multifamily buildings downhill. And again, we'll see that in these views. So this is a view looking down Dunnigan, looking towards the school, which is off the page here. And you can see many of the elements that Barry talked about in terms of building community. It's that infrastructure, that street infrastructure of the pedestrian, the cyclist, the convenience of the parallel parking, which helps mitigate speeding traffic on roads. It's the front stoops and porches that look out to the public way. And again, bringing that scale down, making it feel more of a village, trying to pull some of those architectural elements that we found in Glenwood and kind of just reinterpreting that in a fresh, modern perspective to these townhouses along Dunnigan. This is the view from Chaparral at Dunnigan, looking across, so you can see the clubhouse sitting downhill from the ceremonial entrance. We've actually in this process pulled these townhouses further away from the intersection to really open up both the horizontal capture of Red Mountain in the background. But again, that clubhouse sits downhill and below kind of the datum line of the roofs of the townhouses above. And as you can see, the multifamily that sits to the left and behind, because of their distance and their downhill location, their height is mitigated by distance and the slope down. So they remain visually in appearance looking lower than the townhouses up on Dunnigan Road. And here's the corner of Dunnigan and Storm King looking back. And again, this is the multifamily building that offers both what we would consider more your traditional multifamily units, but also the live work units. And again, similar pattern, the sloping down from Dunnigan, and it allows these taller buildings to not project up and obstruct views of the mountains across the valley. And as we turn the corner on Center Drive, coming back in, again, to the right of this view would be the office buildings and the back of the mall. So this entrance off of Center Drive seemed like a great opportunity to introduce these entrepreneurial type of units that can help create a little bit more diversity to the community. And they would have storefront type facades that just look out to the office and can develop a streetscape and excitement as you enter into the community. And with that, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Curtis.
Thank you, Matthew. Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. I'm Curtis Rowe with Kimley Horn. I'm a traffic engineer, and it is my pleasure to join you tonight to discuss the results of the traffic impact study. This first slide here shows the extent of the scope that we evaluated in that traffic study. We worked with City of Glenwood Springs staff, your staff, to determine which roadways and intersections we would evaluate. And so as you can see from this, we evaluated Storm King Road, Mel Ray, Donegan, Highway 6, and even the intersection off to the right of your screen there that shows the Highway 6 and Donegan intersection. And so with this study, we identified improvements. And so let's jump into those. This next slide shows what we are proposing to do to improve the Highway 6 and Donegan Road intersection. And so it would be to widen Highway 6 to the north so that we can actually add a left turn lane. The westbound movements would move to the north and we would have an eastbound left turn. And what that would do is it would allow for a two-stage southbound left for traffic turning from Donegan onto Highway 6 to head to the city, into the city. So an easier movement by widening this roadway. The next image shows the site location and the improvements that we're proposing here. We're proposing a new four-way stop or all-way stop intersection at Center Drive and Storm King Road. When we evaluated that with the school traffic there, there's a lot of congestion, a lot of pedestrian movements. All-way stop control will more efficiently accommodate the traffic and also improve the safety of that intersection. And then there is an access proposed along Donegan Road, and so that intersection up there will have a stop sign too. And the next slide, this shows the existing pedestrian and bicycle access in the study area. And as Barry noted, there's a gap in both sidewalk and bicycle connections along Donegan Road adjacent to the property. And so that's something of significance. You know, from our field observations and visit, we noted that, you know, it's not a very friendly street for pedestrians and bicyclists. And so that's an area that could handle improvements. And so the next slide shows what we're proposing to do with development of the project. And so it's providing the connection, the missing connection of sidewalk. The sidewalk here is shown in red. And so you can see that there are new sidewalks all along the property frontage. But in addition to that, we are connecting over to Mel Ray Road with new sidewalk and connecting and constructing a sidewalk along Mel Ray Road down to Highway 6. And so that's a significant improvement, which will help for pedestrian flow. And then the lines that are shown in blue/purple, those are the bike lane extensions. And so this includes bike lanes along Storm King Road and then also bike lanes along Donegan Road. And again, the missing link where there are no bike lanes today, those will be designated along Donegan between the property site and Soccer Field Road. So we're providing for that missing connection, which will improve the link and improve the connection of the corridor. The next slide shows some street cross sections. These may be a little bit hard to read, but I'll just describe what it is that what we're looking at, which of significance. That street section on the upper left is Storm King, north of Center Drive. And that area to the right is the new construction. And so you can see that it's being widened on the east side of the roadway. A new bicycle lane, as mentioned, is in there, as well as parking. There'll be on-street parking and then curb and gutter section and then sidewalk further to the east. So a significant widening along that section of Storm King. The cross section shown in the bottom left is Storm King Road to the south of Center. And so that's the designation of the new bike lanes along that stretch. The cross section in the upper right, that is the new Donegan Road street section. And so that shows the widening along the south side of Donegan, in which we would develop, as mentioned, the bike lanes for both sides of the street, as well as then having area for on-street parking and curb and gutter. And then additionally outside of that, sidewalk further to the south. And then that cross section shown in the bottom right, that's the extension of Center Drive into the property to the east of Storm King. And so that roadway will connect through and provide access to 480 Donegan. And so this slide here shows the Mel Ray Road improvements. And these are significant. As mentioned before, the project would connect the sidewalk along Donegan Road from the property edge to soccer field, but it also would construct sidewalk along the west side of Mel Ray Road. And so that's connecting all the way down to Highway 6. In addition, as you're well aware, there's a valley gutter and drainage inlets in the middle of Mel Ray. And so the improvement that's proposed here would include curb and gutter on both sides, and to create a normal street crown section so the drainage moves to the outside of the roadway, and we would remove all of that internal, that center drainage, valley gutter, and improve the conditions for drainage, which will also improve traffic conditions for that street. So as you can see, these traffic improvements are significant, and they will improve operations and safety for all road users, even with the addition of project traffic. And so when you compare it to the existing condition, traffic conditions for all road users will improve. And so that does it for me. I'll be available to answer any questions later on in the process for this meeting, but I'll turn this back over to you guys.
Got it? Okay. So it's about 7:30, and what we're gonna do is, as I indicated, we're not gonna ask any questions from council at this point. Let's take I'm gonna keep it to 5 minutes, so at 7:35, we'll start taking public comment. We'll take 10 from here, and then we'll take 10 from the Zoom, and then we'll start there. So, okay? So reconvene at 7:35.
Very good.
So, if you could be quiet, please, thank you. So just a couple of things you understand. Some of the people in the Zoom and in the other room are having difficulty hearing. We want to make sure everybody can hear everybody. So there is both the microphones sticking up, and there's also a microphone that looks like this on the podium. Please make sure you speak clearly. If you got a quiet voice, I'm going to actually ask you to pick this up and talk into this. Does that work? Okay. We want to make sure we can hear everybody. I mean, that's really important for us to hear you up here and for the rest of the public to be able to hear you. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to start out. I'm going to have Jen start announcing people. When you come up to the podium, I want you to do two things or three things, I guess. One, first of all, identify your name, your first and last name. Tell us whether you're a resident of the city of Glenwood Springs, whether you're non-resident but live in West Glenwood, or whether you're non-resident. So non-resident would be like from Newcastle, that would be a non-resident. Does that all make sense to everybody? It helps us understand where you come from and what's going on. I don't want just non-resident. We know a lot of West Glenwood that are non-resident people are here tonight. Okay? Remember, it'd be 3-minute cutoff. Who's our monitor on time?
Time will be up.
Time will be up here. Please watch it. I think I'll have it on my screen as well. My screen, I guess, is working again. So with that, Jen.
Carleen Clark.
Okay, my name is Carleen Clark. I am a non-resident. I live at 570 Mel Ray in West Glenwood. As I've looked at this project, I've quickly become clear to me that it is just another thorn in a much bigger problem. We believe that we need to keep building to solve the growing housing shortage, but we have not paused long enough to study the road's limited capacity and inability to evacuate quickly. Each additional project increases the risk of our citizens. Safety should come first before we continue to build. When do we acknowledge that our valley and road infrastructure has limited population capacity and that it can safely support? We need to remember the current road infrastructure is not designed to handle the current density, let alone the increase with the proposed project. During emergencies, the street quickly become gridlocked and take hours to resolve. The additional residents would only compound that problem. West Glenwood roads all lead to Highway 6. Highway 6 has 2 exits to I-70 with small roundabouts. I am not an expert, but it seems the deep ditches might as well be 40-foot walls because they prevent escape. In a YouTube video interview with CNN, our mayor stated that if we had a large fire in our town, he would expect 1,000 lives lost. One life is a tragedy. 1,000 is devastating and unthinkable. To me, is that me? Is that my children? Or maybe your own? Who would be among the dead? Our city documents do not demonstrate that safety comes first. Items were identified 14 years ago that do not exist today, such as shelter-in-place areas. These would provide hope for those cut off from evacuation. Based on our mayor's statement about life lost in the area's priority level high rating, it is extremely likely to happen. I beg you to make the hard decision and follow planning and zoning's recommendations of denial. I beg that you put safety first and build the infrastructure, and then strategically plan projects that fit those parameters. Glenwood safe, Glenwood strong, and thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Very much. Next.
Annie Uehara.
Thank you, you did very well. Can you hand me that to?
Oh, let me take this off. So, my name is Annie Uehara. I am a West Glenwood Springs County resident. I knew that the pasture would not stay untouched and wasn't fighting that reality. Our two partners presents an attractive development and seems to be a reputable developer. Included in that plan is 10% that's required to go to much needed affordable housing. So why not go with R2's plan? Because it does not address infrastructure overload, which may cost lives. I understand that some council members will ignore P&Z's rejection of the proposal as incompatible for the neighborhood, but would agree to 480 Donegan if R2 Partners provides an acre for a new firehouse in West Glenwood Springs. The new firehouse is not the answer. Infrastructure and controlled growth is. Wish Mayor Godis was here because we were neighbors in South Glenwood Springs and lamented about the hemmed-in neighborhoods that should there be a wildfire, most of us would be sitting in gridlock on Midland Avenue at Wright Park Road. A firehouse already sits in a strategic place in South Glenwood Springs, but it's not about the firehouse. It's about infrastructure. It's insufficient for South Glenwood Springs, and as such, a fairly recent development proposal up 4 Mile was shot down for that very reason, and rightly so. So Mayor Godis and City Council, how can you be concerned about South Glenwood Springs safety? And I do see a sign out there that says serving Glenwood Springs, but how can you be concerned about South Glenwood Springs safety and infrastructure and ignore the same on the other side of our canyon town? West Glenwood Springs already has a gridlock problem. The 111 fire pre-evacuation proved it, with all the narrow travel corridors blocked with cars, including the roundabout. You guys have that in front of you. You can look at it. If 480 Donegan is passed, it would be hypocrisy. You cannot worry about the safety on one side of town and not worry about the other side. Putting high-density projects up and down West Glenwood Springs, as is currently happening, has to have an end point. There's only so much growth that a canyon town can take. 480 Donegan is about 3 times too large for the location. It's not safe, it's overload. Finally, I'd love the council to have foresight to understand that frequent wildfires, let this be your legacy. Be a council with foresight. Think about the future of wildfires and drought.
I have to, if I let everybody go.
I'm done.
Thank you. I know, I apologize for interrupting, but thank you very much.
I want to talk some more.
Don't take the microphone with you, please. Yes.
Bobby Merriweather?
Bobby Merriweather asked to wait until the next meeting.
Okay, so we'll put her on the, yeah, we had that.
Annie Stevens?
Am I speaking into this or into this?
Oh. The flat microphone has some better quality to it than the other, but if you speak loud, it should go to both.
Okay. My name is Annie Stevens. My husband and I live in West Glenwood. We're opposed to this development for many reasons, the main one being safety. But I'd like to address some of the other impacts this development will have on our small town and quality of life. If you take the exact acreage of land immediately to the north of this property, you will count 43 residential homes compared to the 332 units the developer is proposing. That is almost 8 times the density. There is nowhere in Glenwood where there will be a development of this size next to single-family homes. R2's proposed development will be triple the size of Six Canyon.
I question how this fits in with health, safety and welfare and the city's vision of small town character. The residents on this development could bring 1,000 or more vehicles. Consider the traffic impact to Glenwood Springs, but specifically to the 3 narrow roads surrounding this property and the 2 nearby roundabouts used by the majority of people in this valley. On top of the daily trips by the residents themselves, you will have delivery vehicles, department stores and U-Haul vehicles, trash and snow removal vehicles, emergency vehicles, customers and clients utilizing the 13 live-work units, restaurant workers, food delivery vehicles, and people dining at the restaurant. And lastly, guests visiting all of the residents living on the development. Even with road improvements, West Glenwood is incapable of handling a development of this size. These additional vehicles will have a devastating impact on the infrastructure, clogging the streets and turning our city into a parking lot. Your Planning and Zoning Commission denied it unanimously. The county commissioners had considerable concerns. We have almost 600 Facebook members and 1,500 petition signatories that oppose this development. We urge you to deny this application. We're asking you, our City Council, to make a decision that you can live with, and hopefully not one that some of us could die by. We put safety first. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mark Strauss?
Hello, my name is Mark Strauss. I'm a resident of West Glenwood. We're in the county. I really wasn't planning on speaking tonight, so I don't have anything prepared. I did make myself some few notes, so I'll be a little bit random, kind of all over the board, so just bear with me. Looking at the presentation today, kind of reminded me of Alice's Restaurant with the 8x10 color glossy photos with paragraphs and circles and arrows on each one, showing what each one is. Great presentation, showing everything. But, I mean, these guys are salesmen, they're developers. They want to make it look as good as they possibly can and just keep selling and selling and selling until something's accepted. This is about at least the third time I've seen changes, or at least second time since the initial one that I remember seeing. So, you know, I don't know if we keep doing this, maybe it'll get down more and more, I don't know. As far as the annexation goes, there was a comment made about the cities being with public health and safety and welfare. Having lived through both Storm King and Coal Seam out in West Glenwood, I tell you, it's one thing to say, yeah, we understand the problems, we're with you, we want to take care of things. But until you're driving through smoke, when you see your neighbor's house burning and you're heading out as quick as you can with nothing except your family and your animals, it's a whole different feeling than reading it on paper. There's a lot of talk about the fire safety and putting in a new firehouse there, which would be great. But again, you know, you're going to redevelop the mall. I'd like to see a plan of what they're actually talking about as far as redeveloping the mall. You know, put the old driving back in there as far as that's concerned.
Ask the public not to comment. I know it's hard to do, but please keep the volume down, let the speaker speak.
I'd like to see in some of these plans that you're talking about. I admit I did not read the packet before we came today, so I can't address any of the specifics. I can just talk in generalities. Okay, I'm talking. You know, they're talking about the housing, reducing the amount of housing in there. I don't know what the costs are. I don't know if those are in the packets that were given out. Glenwood's not a cheap place to live. You know, you can say, yeah, we're going to have 2 people live in this unit, 2 people in this unit. I can almost guarantee you it's not going to stay that way. People are going to be having other roommates in, people staying there. And I don't know, you say you're gonna, monitor it. Good luck with that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Rose Shepherd.
Thank you for letting us speak tonight. I oppose the development of the, oh, I didn't, I just assumed you knew me, sorry. I'm kidding. Rose Shepherd, I live on 331 Mel Ray Road, which is just outside the city limit. So I oppose this development for several reasons, but the main two reasons are safety and changing the nature of the Western Hills subdivision. On June 8th, 2002, the coal seam fire jumped the Colorado River and I-70, causing West Glenwood to be evacuated. I immediately evacuated with my children and headed east on Donegan Road. Mel Ray Road was closed, leaving no access to Highway 6. All of West Glenwood was exiting at the exact same time. The traffic was at a standstill. My family car did not move for over an hour. After sitting for 20 minutes, I glanced at my rearview mirror and saw the bright red and orange, glow of the fire. I thought the fire had already taken over Western Hills and would be upon us in minutes. I gently told my kids that we might be leaving the car and running to Two Rivers Park as soon as any flames were visible. Luckily, we didn't need to run, but it took us over 2.5 hours to get our evacuation spot, which was St. Stephen's School, which is a normal 12-minute drive. The present infrastructure in West Glenwood cannot safely accommodate an additional housing development. Since 2002's fire and gridlock, several new housing projects, townhomes, condos have been added to the Donegan area as their exit point. Adding another large apartment complex will immediately negatively impact West Glenwood's residents' daily drive to school and work, but more importantly, may trap them in those cars when the next wildfire comes. Okay, so in addition to the safety, I'm also concerned with the impact of the development on the nature of Western Hills. It's a quiet, dark space with very little artificial light. Currently, I can sit outside at night and see thousands of stars, the Big Dipper, meteor showers, the big department.
No, it's hard, but thank you very much.
I know, no, that's okay. Thank you.
Lisa Rose. Lisa Rose.
You can say it any way you want.
Sorry if I mispronounced
That's
it.
okay, that's a difficult one. All righty. Hello, my name is Lisa Oras. I live at 51 Chaparral Circle, just north of the onion fields. I have lived in that address for 53 years and have had 2 horrifying experiences evacuating with 3 young children, leaving behind my husband and 4 other family members who were all on various firefighting agencies. Last summer, the 111 fire was an absolute disaster. Our city and county failed to shut down the West Glenwood to commuter traffic. In turn, every street was bumper to bumper with cars. No evacuations could have occurred. Thousands of lives could have been lost. Just like other areas of our town, we only had one way out. R2 wants to overpopulate that same neighborhood with no mention, until tonight, of parkland, but there is no truly affordable housing like Carbondale has been. R2 has redesigned and readjusted their numbers, and it is still too much. According to Mr. Rosenberg, with the purchase of the mall property, he would like to build a Willits-type development which would mean commercial space below and even more residents on top. It is also my understanding that R2 is not hiring any local contractors. I'm suggesting that now that Mr. Rosenberg has straight access to 6 and 24, that there be no entrances, exits, or parking onto Donegan. Note that the traffic study was done during COVID, but this does not alleviate the congestion at the 114. A comment was made in a recent guest column that these commuters should be able to live closer to their jobs. Well, this development is putting those commuters right out in the same over-congested 114 roundabout. If they really need to live closer to their jobs, maybe R2 needs to build this in Aspen or Snowmass. I recently compared Doc Jackson's 140-acre ranch to the horse pasture. Why did I do that? Because I find every inch of this Roaring Fork Valley beautiful, and I would like to keep it that way. The Demoses compared the pasture to an onion field. That just proves to me that they look down their noses at this property and the surrounding neighborhoods. This project will also add to the overburdened West Glenwood Sanitation District and our city water supply, which now has an abundance of water, according to Matt Langford. These backroom deals going on between Rosenberg, Demos, and Trent Hyatt are starting to sound a bit like rotten onions to me. I've always been told you can do 1,000 fantastic projects and one terrible one, and you will be remembered by that terrible one. Safety first.
I know that this is passionate, and there were some comments made in the last comment that were personal. I'm going to ask you not to make any personal comments about staff members, about the developer, about city council. Me, I don't care. You can say whatever you want. But seriously, I think it's really important that we keep the personalities out of it. This is a professional presentation, and we want to keep it that way from the public standpoint as well as our standpoint. So I would appreciate leaving the private comments or personal comments out. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, please no clapping. It just takes other people's time away.
Yeah, and I have asked that before. We appreciate all the comments. We appreciate no reaction from the audience. I know it's hard, but it's not going to impress us one way or the other. So you got to keep that in mind. All right? Next, please.
Lori Raymond.
Hold on one second.
Hi, my name is Lori Raymond.
Somebody's got some kind of alarm or something going on. Make sure your phones are off or muted, please. Okay, that's distracting. Thank you. Go ahead, Lori.
Okay, my name is Lori Raymond, and I live in West Glenwood, and I own a business in West Glenwood and have been there for over 18 years. I have definitely concurred with all of the safety concerns of every other member of our group that's spoken at all of these meetings. But tonight I want to speak as an employer who has had a business in West Glenwood right around the corner from where this development would be. And I want to suggest that the comprehensive plan that has guided the process of this project is outdated. It's definitely obsolete. I understand, and I hope it's true, that there is a new comprehensive plan being worked on now, about to be undertaken. We are in several respects in an unprecedented situation. One of those is with climate change and the impact of climate change on all of us, and it's likely to make these weather events and fires more, not less, of a concern ongoing. And so the safety infrastructure is going to need more attention and more up-to-date and more productive attention for a future. The second one is about the demographics. We talk about affordable housing, but over the years, I have lost a number of staff people who can no longer afford to live here. And I'm thinking, if you're going to expand the mall and bring in more retail and office space, where are those workers going to live? They're not going to live in this project. My employees aren't going to live in this project. We have a staff of 9. I have had employees go into homelessness situations in an interim situation because they could not find housing that they could afford, which is at a considerably lower level than what you consider affordable housing in this area. I'm talking about my staff, me, the retail workers, I'm not talking about nurses necessarily, but the CNAs, the people that staff and support all of the activities in the recreation industry that supports our whole community. I hope and expect that the new comprehensive plan for this area will take into consideration those demographic changes. They're important, I hope, to you. It will determine whether Glenwood will continue to be a livable community and be able to support and house the workers that support all the activities that draw people to it. Thank you.
Anna Bernstein or Bernstein?
They're running down the hallway.
We should put a timer on
So you can get here the fastest. Thank you very much for your.
Hi, my name is Anna Bernstein. I'm a chiropractor in this town, and I love Glenwood Springs. Glenwood Springs, what? I live in West Glenwood on Chaparral Circle. I bought in 2000. It is the most beautiful, nicest street with the most beautiful, nicest community ever. And all those people that live in West Glenwood, they work their asses off. They work so hard to maintain their houses. They're working people. They're not rich. They are of the salt and earth. And that is what is so important in Glenwood, the people. Putting that development in there is dangerous.
Overdevelopment will destroy Glenwood. Moratorium.
Stop this. If anyone else has that kind of an outburst, I will ask the police chief to remove them from the building. Is that understood? That is not appropriate in a public hearing. Sorry you were interrupted, ma'am. Okay. So I stopped the time. You may proceed.
I'm that side. Anyway, I was there for the cold steam fire, and it took 2.5 hours to get out of that area, and I was by myself and single, and it was terrifying. Then in the 110 fire last summer, my friend stayed at my house near the corner of Mel Ray and Donegan until the traffic started to go on I-70. And once the traffic started to move, the parking lot started to move of downtown of West Glenwood. It took her an hour and a half just to get to the highway. Can you imagine if the whole town of West Glenwood was burning and it took her an hour and a half from Mel Ray and Donegan to get to the freeway? It only took her a half hour once the freeway was moving to get to Newcastle. But the parking lot is super dangerous during fire. And like Lori said, with climate change, more and more fires. And the uniqueness of West Glenwood is just so unique, and the people and the realness. And that's what keeps our town so beautiful and not gentrified. These are important things in the development of Glenwood Springs. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sherry Fernandez?
Okay.
I'm gonna go online now, so if you haven't already and you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. And if you are on the telephone only, it's *9, and then it's *6 to unmute. We'll go to Lacey King.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh.
I exist.
Hey, hold on a second. Let me.
Because we're trying to go online, that's.
Yeah, we'll take you first. That's after we know online people. Lacey.
Sure.
Okay. So have a seat just for a second.
Oh, okay.
All right. Sorry. Try to get it balanced.
Don Randolph?
Mr. Randolph, are you out there?
Yes, my name is Dawn Randolph. I am
Dawn,
a non-resident that lives in West Glenwood Springs at 261 Mitchell Creek Road. I'd like to start by saying thank you and sharing my story of the 111 South Canyon fire from last year. I was recovering from a knee replacement surgery in which I ended up having a subsequent infection. With a PICC line in my arm, my husband here, we got the pre-evacuation notice immediately and packed up all our things with our neighbors. My husband did. I was only able to watch. When we were watching all of the air traffic to fight that, and I was using my walker to get outside to look and see how close the fire was. My husband rode his bike down to the corner of Highway 6 and Mitchell Creek Road, where he spoke to the sheriff that was blocking traffic. We already had a lot of traffic just on our small road. And he said, if we need to leave and my wife needs medical care, she cannot go without medical care right now. How would you like us to evacuate? The sheriff looked down the street, which was packed, overflowing on Highway 6, and said, I guess you'd need to go this way. My husband rode his bicycle down and took pictures of standstill. We would have had no way out. I've never felt so vulnerable and so dependent on other people, and it was really scary. That was 1 year ago, and there hasn't been any changes in our infrastructure. There hasn't been any changes in our evacuation plans. In fact, there's an evacuation sign on the corner of Donegan and Mitchell Creek Road laying on the ground. It's something that I personally am fighting for, that Glenwood Springs and the different municipalities and organizations come together to help people figure out how we are going to evacuate when the next fire happens. It's a multi-jurisdictional plan that's needed. And until then, I think growth is irresponsible to this degree. I am personally a person that likes to build community, build friendships. I get to know my neighbors. And the thought of losing my neighbors in a fire because we don't have sufficient infrastructure, planning, and thought taken into the care of the safety of the people who move here is absolutely devastating to think of. The loss of life. It's not something that is unheard of. We just have to look at places around our country, including Paradise, California, to see that this is a reality. We have a responsibility to the people who already live in West Glenwood Springs, as well as the people we want to have move there. I look forward to having new neighbors and doing so in a way that is responsible and takes their lives and the lives of the people that live there already into consideration. Please make a decision based on what would be best for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Next.
So there isn't anyone else online. I'll just ask one more time. You want to raise your hand if you're online? Keith? Lacey King?
Hi, Lacey King, 206 Mel Ray, non-resident. Being a home rule state, transformation for a resilient future should start in our towns and cities. With concerns of traffic, affordability, drought, wildfire, and mudslides persisting, better planning, design, and governance is required at this time. I believe a pause is needed to allow local decision makers to redefine zoning codes and ordinances to ensure future development aligns with our community's vision of directed and balanced development. In fact, a P&Z consideration is to determine our future in conjunction with an update to the comprehensive plan before large-scale development or annexation occurs. That being said, with the mall contract now on the table, why not make future annexation contingent upon purchase and revitalization of that space first? This would allow time to update the comprehensive plan as well as implement evacuation protocols. It's my hope that the developer would be in support of this and possibly use the time to think about actual dedicated parkland instead of fees in lieu of, to hold themselves accountable to the sense of community they speak so often about. And if not, at least pursue a change in design to locate entry and exit to the south, reducing traffic impacts to our existing neighborhoods. Many of us within those neighborhoods were here last summer and in years past and have directly experienced what disaster looks like when there are too many vehicles with no plans in place. And by now, I imagine you all know West Glenwood is very high risk wildfire location, with one location being the only extreme risk in all of Glenwood Springs. Therefore, it was encouraging to hear P&Z mention the need to address life safety egress issues before approval. The county commissioners also recommended the need to develop and implement evacuation plans So it's extremely concerning as to how city staff came to the recommendation that development does not negatively impact safety and welfare. When I hear the words evacuation plan, the first thing that comes to my mind is the safety and welfare of our community. We are far less defenseless when we work together, and many locals are hungry for that process, as that empowerment is what a true sense of community is all about. With the update of the comprehensive plan upon us, the time to make land use more resilient is now. We can do better. Please put the safety of your current residents first. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jennifer Zwickel.
Jennifer Zwickel in the other room?
Yeah, I think she's walking over right now.
Okay.
Inside, the windows are great.
I know.
It's like the Olympics.
So you're second in speed from the other room so far.
I'll take silver, that's okay. My name is Jennifer Zwickel. I live at 40 Chaparral Circle, so I am a West Glenwood resident. We've heard a lot of people talk about the health and safety of the community as far as fire evacuations, but as a mental health professional and somebody who works in addictions, I want to call your attention to another major safety issue that this town has. We are not protecting the adolescents, and I'm talking about parks and recreation space, bike parks, things like that that are attractive to that 12 to 18-year-old group. Protective factors against drug use, experimentation, DUIs are things that they can do and access reasonably affordable, so cheap or free. We no longer have a bowling alley. We no longer have movie theaters. We no longer have a miniature golf course. We do not have a bike park. The things that are protective factors for adolescent development minus drug use are non-existent in this community. The pasture, that there would be a prime facility to put in a bike park or something that would allow the youth to have something that does not allow them to get bored and experiment with drugs. As a mental health professional in the addictions treatment, I'm seeing younger and younger and younger clients coming in facing horrific charges, including manslaughter, because they drove while drunk, because they had nothing better to do than drink. This is not something that creates a safe environment. When you're talking about building a community with public health, welfare first, mental and emotional health is part of that. We're not just talking about the physical nature of being able to evacuate, although that is critical and unaddressed for years. I lived through Storm King. I lived in this neighborhood through coal seam. It's devastating. But what we're doing by not protecting the youth and offering these, I mean, most of our youth can't afford a $35 ticket to go to the hot springs. There is nothing for that age group that is so critically at risk for drug use and dependence. When you go to the high school and your freshman orientation includes a tour that shows you where all of the spots are where cameras aren't so you can vape, that is concerning. That is the legacy our adolescents are living in right now, which means this community is rapidly becoming unsafe to raise a family in. So beyond all of the other developmental issues, we need to invest in the mental health, emotional health of this community if we want to have a community worth living in. Thank you.
Please stop.
Michael Hogan.
Thank you. My name is Michael Hogan. My wife and I have been in Glenwood over 50 years, 35 in West Glenwood, Ponderosa Circle, which is in the county. We love West Glenwood. It's a good place to live. This project just does not fit in West Glenwood. It's kind of like dropping a bomb on us. It's not just the immensity of the project. It goes against all the tenets of Glenwood Springs, including small town character, safety and welfare, and the quality of life. This is a very serious deal for us. Last summer, a fire in South Canyon resulted in total gridlock. We couldn't even go a block walking. There was no escape. The coal seam fire evacuation was also a disaster. This is just a total nightmare. I mean, we've been through all the fires. There was even smaller fires near us. These fires were, the big ones were less than 2 blocks away from us. Just the density of this project is overwhelming. The roads can barely handle us even now. All our schools will be overwhelmed. This proposed project is just way too much. It does not work. No matter, I'm sorry, I messed up here. No matter what you say, it puts us in much more danger than we currently have. No more quality of life, just quantity. There are many other options for this project, for this 12 plus acres. Ones that could fit in our neighborhood and would be welcome. Please deny this annexation. Our lives could depend on it. It is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joan Adler?
Ms. Adler, I assume you're in the room?
It doesn't appear that she's here. No.
Okay. If she comes in, we'll pick her up. Oh, Mark Adler's here.
Mark.
Mark's next.
There's no truth that I'm telling.
Okay, Mark Adler.
Why you didn't respond?
Good evening, Council. Thank you for having this meeting tonight. First, let me say that with an annexation comes, Mark Adler, 525 West 12th Street, and my wife and I have been residents since 1971. With an annexation comes great responsibility to the city. So, things that I would like you to consider would be, first of all, water. We have right now water restrictions in place. This will put a burden on our water system, and it is not something to be taken lightly. Also, we annex a property in the city. Residential property is an expense. Usually the city, obviously, when you have retail and that, you make sales tax money. When you have residential, it costs the city. So you just need to take a look and see what the cost will be to the city once it's the annex would go through. I don't know how much truth there was in the article I read in the Glenwood Post, which actually encouraged me to come in, but this is 332 units, and they said something like it would house 600 people. I think that's very low estimate, because you're not going to have less than 2 people per unit. So you need to take a look at that density, and is this the way you do it? You're not going to be able to police it. What are you going to do? Send the an officer, your compliance officer, to knock on every door. That's not gonna happen. They said they're gonna redevelop the mall. I would like to know exactly what that redevelopment entails before I would sign off. Yeah, and are they gonna be buying the mall property? I don't know if that's in the works or not. They would like to, but I don't know if they've gotten together with Frank Woods and what that deal is. The big question you have to ask yourself tonight and in the coming meetings, is Glenwood Springs better off with this development after it's finished or not? And that's the big question. As a city, as the city as a whole, will we be better off? And that's the only question you really have to ask yourself. Thank you for your time.
Debbie Wolf.
Hi, my name is Debbie Wolf. I'm a resident of West Glenwood. I've only been in West Glenwood since 2018. I lived in Newcastle before that. I just want to say I agree with what other people have said. I'm concerned about the safety. And it's not if a fire is going to happen, it's when the next fire happens. We live in a place where there's been fires. We've had 3 large fires in the past 30 years and a lot of small ones. So I propose that if the property needs to be developed, that we have a lower density population. But I think before that happens, we need to look at the infrastructure of our West Glenwood area so that people can get out. It's very scary to think about being stuck and your house is going to be burning down. So that's my big plea is please help us get the infrastructure in place before you start putting in major home developments. Thank you.
Very much.
Shirley Bowen.
I'm Shirley Bowen. I live in West Glenwood, and I've lived there since 1983. I think that you're building a bridge with no support. There's no way that the roads that we have now are going to handle it. If you go and look at the turnarounds now, it's like watching bumper cars. And you want to add 1,000 people to that? I'll try not to say what I think, since I've been cautioned, but it's just not going to work. Sidewalks, bike trails, we need ways for traffic, huge amounts of traffic to get through there. And they're all going on Highway 6, a 2-lane highway. That's not going to work. You already have me limited on the water I can use every other day. I have trees from the original orchard. Are you going to tell me one of these days I don't have water for them or for myself? When fires come, there's no water. You want us to not use anything? And then you want to add 1,000 people? That means my water supply is cut in half. You have no water. You need to stop growth entirely in this town. You don't have the water for it, and it's going to get even worse because of climate change. You see the reports, the river, everything, nothing is as it has been for water. We're just at the tip of the iceberg of how bad that's going to get. I'm sorry, but I don't want to have to give up any more of my water for 1,000 more people, because that's really probably the more accurate estimate of how many people will be in that thing, probably even more than that. But anyway, there's no way this should go forward. Please use common sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Greg Young.
Greg Young?
Greg Jung, no name. So I'm sorry I dumped that missive on you guys. But anyway, I have a few more things to add. I did a comparison of the densities to try to put things in context. 480 Donegan envisions 332 units on 12 acres. I looked at 7 existing complexes in West Glenwood. They total 310 units on 21.5 acres. And those impacts are spread out over 7 different locations, not just one large one with questionable egress and access. With the mall under contract, I believe the city needs to require direct access to Highway 6 and 24, except perhaps the 40 townhomes. And by doing that, it's going to have much less impact on the schools in the neighborhood, and even probably less than the necessary off-site cost by R2. And using the unit mix shown in their PUD site plan and the city development code for parkland dedication requirements, I came up with this proposal of 854 residents, down from their first mix of 306 units with 870. And they say that they're going to limit the residents to only 600. I don't know how they're going to be managed or policed through lease agreements. I think the dollars are going to matter more to them. And again, the Muni Code is the law. There's been talk about the comp plan, which is advisory or guideline. An open space is not an either or consideration, as some have posited. I strongly believe some park school land be required that would benefit many. There is a shortage of parkland in the area, and Tours Community School does use city-owned Gregory Park for a playground. Fees in lieu of proposed reductions paid to the city for their private recreation facilities, bike lanes, and sidewalks. And it's unacceptable. I cannot believe they proposed that a tot lot is only placed open to the public. There needs to be more public parkland. Land is better. Dollars once spent are gone, but land is permanent. I don't want to see promises made and not kept, like Cardiff Glen with no clubhouse and maybe no pool. Realities of water. The city states there's adequate capacity to serve development. But if there's no water, capacity doesn't matter. A resident of No Name in our community water system, the city dried up the creek because they failed to go to Grizzly Creek to divert. The fire emergency impact fees, they propose to be spread out over building permits. But because costs rise and there's a need right away, they need to pay those fees right up front. And I believe the PUD site plan should just be discarded and the master plan with the combined parcels done together. Thank you.
Jones?
Didn't hear my name, but I came in behind him, so.
You're next.
My name is Sean Jung, and I also live in No Name, which is, I'm a non-resident. We may or may not need more housing, but one thing that has become crystal clear is the need for the right type of housing. Habitat for Humanity is always looking for land to continue to build housing and create neighborhoods that afford true home ownership to individuals who may otherwise never be able to own their own home. Mountain Mobile Home Park, just a stone's throw from the property in question, has provided affordable home ownership for years. And in recent years, Two Rivers Village in Dot Zero has done the same thing. If more rentals are built, they must be affordable to the people who they are expected to attract. Carbondale just completed 30 rentals with rent starting at $700 for a studio and going to $900 for a 2-bedroom. In the current municipal code for Glenwood Springs, deed restrictions, which in my limited understanding are part of what help make and keep something affordable, go away after 30 years. But way before that, they can be at any time converted to free market rent or sale with some repayment to the city. Deed restricting alone does not protect the general citizenry from being vulnerable to prices skyrocketing once something is built. The parcel of land in question tonight is in the county and has commercial limited zoning, which allows for a, quote, limited range of commercial uses needed to meet the shopping needs of residents in the adjacent neighborhoods. Businesses are oriented to the neighborhood and compatible with surrounding residential uses, end quote. The 24-hour warehouse operation that has been mentioned would not fit this use. A mini storage facility, which is a need, would. It would be less impactful and more acceptable than 332 housing units. None of this precludes Mr. Demos from developing or selling his parcel of land, and nothing says that he must take the needs of the existing citizenry into consideration. But Glenwood alone does not need to provide all the majority of housing for our greater region. A grocery store would meet a lot of needs and would provide sales tax revenues and have very little to no negative impact on our schools. I never imagined myself saying this, and I'm grateful that I can, but it looks like I'm not going to be able to, agreeing with what County Commissioner Mike Sampson said recently. I'm just going to end right now before I get cut off. Help us be glad that we live in Paradise, Colorado, and not a reenactment of Paradise, California.
Kirby Wynn?
And I'm assuming nobody's joined from the audio. Do we have anybody in the video?
We do have one, but we still haven't done through 10.
Okay.
Hey, Charlie, can you give a reminder to the other room that it's not fair that they don't get to hear.
Oh, I can't hear them, so that's probably my hearing problem. I'm hearing challenged for those who don't know that. I have hearing aids. But I don't get clapped for.
So, let me.
For those in the municipal courtroom, please do not react to the comments of the citizens making those comments. Please don't clap, or otherwise, it's, again, I've said before, it's not going to influence us in any way. We hear the comments. We're very interested in the comments, but not in the reactions. So thank you very much. You may proceed.
Good evening. My name is Kirby Wynn, and I live in West Glenwood Springs with my wife and dogs just a few hundred feet outside the city. In our view, the true infrastructure needs for this proposal have not been addressed. The proposal is for urban density development of a magnitude that, if you look at other responsibly planned cities, is generally placed along Collector Street with 4 lanes, or if it's going to be 2 lanes, there are fully dedicated turn lanes to minimize traffic congestion that we're not really seeing with this. The project proponent has glossed over, in our view, the impacts to your already overtaxed roundabouts servicing I-70, Highway 6, and the surrounding developments. Much of the modeled traffic flow is presumed to head up and down Donegan to get to town. The reality, living there, is that folks located in West Glenwood very consistently traverse the roundabouts and Midland Avenue to access downtown. It seems the developer will say perhaps anything possible to keep you from asking them to invest in truly needed and costly infrastructure improvements, including the already insufficient roundabouts. What they offer in terms of infrastructure improvements barely scratches the surface of what's needed. Please take a hard look at the inadequacies of the proposed infrastructure improvements, and please don't kick the can down the curb as so many Glenwood councils have already for decades to simply add to our huge backlog of infrastructure needs in the city. Glenwood is known for having some of the worst roads in western Colorado, unfortunately. It doesn't have to be that way, but it will always be that way if you approve any development that comes along your way without requiring developers to pony up and include needed infrastructure improvements. Require this developer to pony up investments for adequate roadways, traffic lanes, more than just bike lanes, and roundabout expansion. Also, do not accept fees in lieu of open space and school land set-asides. Require the developer to use some of the acreage to boost the community's bottom line need for recreational and other open space instead of their cash is king bottom line. And please, reject the proposed annexation and rezoning until you see a comprehensive development plan for the subject property and the mall. What's to become of the mall? We don't know. Who's to say the mall will not be raised and then yet another proposal for hundreds of apartments will be with the same inherent problems is going to be next on your agenda. And it'll just be a death by 1,000 cuts, only we're talking hundreds of apartments in a slug. As beautiful as they are, we know we can't have ponies forever in the West Glenwood pasture. But if you do your job well, we can have, our community deserves, a more complete and appropriately scaled development with full magnitude of needed infrastructure development and improvements included up front. Thank you for listening this evening, and I wish you well with a challenging decision in front of you. Very much.
So we do have one on Deborah Bosna.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am a resident of North Glenwood. I live on Maple Street. I looked at watched the whole developer's presentation. My question being, I agree with the fire. I was in Storm King and I was on Highway 6 and I had to purposely stop my car to let people come off of Donegan because it was so backed up. Nobody was letting them on. So that was a long time ago, 15 years or so. But mainly I want the councilors to look at the cost. And it was discussed just a while ago, the maintenance of the road. If you look at Donegan, you look at it now, it doesn't seem wide enough for what they're proposing. There's definitely no room for a bike track or whatever. I didn't see any easements.
Deborah, let me interrupt you. We lost you in the internal speaker system. I'm going to ask Alyssa to restart the 3 o'clock. There we go. Please start from the top. We did not hear much at all what you said.
Okay. I'm Deborah Bosna I live in North Glenwood. I was saying I agree with the emergency situation with the fires. In Storm King, I had to stop on Highway 6 to let people from Donegan onto the road because I was coming from West Glenwood. Nobody was moving. Not only fires, but just recently we had the traffic accidents on I-70 that, am I lost again?
Yeah, we hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. And so I agree, about all that, the safety issues, but also I'd like the councilors to look at the cost, the future cost of, maintaining the roads. I don't see where Donegan's going to be wide enough to do all that the developer proposes. And the increase in the, police, fire staff we have to do. Okay, they say they're going to they're going to give you some land for the fire station, but how much is a fire station going to cost? And I agree, a good store would be nice there, Mr. Demas, but it just seems that if you look at the overall cost of what this is going to do in the future, it's going to hurt. Again, the infrastructure, I live on North Glenwood, our streets are horrible. All through town, there's horrible streets. And how are you going to be able to keep up with the people that have been here for years and with, trying to appease, putting a whole gob of people on one parcel. And that's about all I have to say. It's just, I hope you consider it and look at the future cost and what it's going to do to the infrastructure, how you're going to police it, how you're going to do the fire. Traffic is horrible and there's no solution to that. You can't, his proposal widen it. That's not going to help. Everybody knows that, has been here and seen it. So thank you for my opinion. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Anyone else virtual?
Again, if you want to raise your hand on the Zoom. Catherine Taggart.
Good evening. I'm sure glad I'm here and not there. Thank you, Catherine Taggart, formerly, kind of like Prince, formerly known as Troggers. I am a resident of Glenwood Springs currently. You know, hold that. Okay, sorry. I'm going to be swimming upstream here a little bit. I'm going to be addressing more of the P&Z comments than really the whole thing. But so P&Z cited some discrepancies with the comp plan, including that of small town character, which to me is a nebulous term that means something different to everyone. The comp plan also lists goals as directed development, social and economic diversity, and transportation. And a large part of the comp plan also speaks to economic development, maintaining Glenwood as a regional commercial center, directing development in areas that are cost effective, providing housing, and addressing transportation. Most of the Planning Commission comments, as captured in the minutes, did not address these goals. I've talked with many opponents on this project, more when the proposal was in its infancy. No one likes change, particularly in their virtual backyard. I understand that. I also understand safety issues. My house in West Glenwood has a fire line through the backyard, so I understand safety issues. While I've not had a chance to study the proposal extensively, the only way Glenwood Springs Mall will be developed, or will be redeveloped, is with this property. And this should be part of, it should be a part of a master plan, and it should be included in this. But it should be developed. Mr. Demos has a right to develop his property, and we know what it could be. As much housing as we've built, more is still needed. I'm a 50-year resident of Glenwood Springs, and sadly, I am going to be moving this fall because I can no longer afford to live here. I would urge council to look carefully at this proposal, fix what needs to be fixed, and ultimately move forward with this annexation proposal.
Thank you very much. Hang on a second, sounds like we're getting emergency warnings. Okay. All right, next.
Elizabeth Phillips.
Elizabeth Phillips?
Elizabeth Phillips. Coming from the next room.
Thanks. Huh? You need another break?
Finish in like 15 minutes, does that work?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I thought you were going for like another.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Phillips. I live in West Glenwood, and I'm a resident of the city. First of all, I want to thank the council for your work in examining all of the facts and all of the emotions as well regarding this project. And I just want to say that I endorse everything that I've heard tonight. We're all very much opposed, everyone that I've heard. Everyone that I've heard is opposed to this project. But there are two things specifically that I want to address. The first is fire evacuation routes. We've heard a lot about that tonight. Recurring and inevitable wildfires that continue to threaten our area require that we have effective evacuation routes to protect us. Recent history has shown that such routes do not exist. So what is the plan? What is the plan to take into account approximately 500 to 600 additional vehicles, and that this 272 unit complex will add to the currently inadequate evacuation routes. The second issue I want to address is the general traffic impact. Recurring closures of I-70, such as tonight, because of mudslides, traffic accidents, other emergencies, continue to cause massive, lengthy backups of traffic in West Glenwood. These closures and gridlocks prevent medical and police services from reaching homes in this area of 3,500 residents, which is more than a third of the population of Glenwood Springs. So what is the plan to address this issue of access into and out of West Glenwood during such closures, when approximately 600 to 900 more residents are added? So I respectfully urge you to deny the development of this or any other proposal that would bring significant numbers of additional vehicles to West Glenwood until these negative impacts are addressed and the solutions implemented. Before we increase our population by approximately 25%, we need improved evacuation routes, an updated and better equipped fire department, and upgraded local roads capable of safely and efficiently handling additional traffic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Lacey King, you were the Lacey King who was also on you're on her twice, is that right?
Probably, I guess. I don't know how I ended up on mine.
Do we have another Lacey King present anywhere? I don't think so. Go ahead.
Okay, I just thought I'd double check. John Graham?
I'm trying to focus, I'm trying to concentrate. I've been here for 20 years, I live on 1128. I wear this as a statement, just that I am concerned about, and I'm willing to wear masks, okay, when they're appropriate, but no one on the council has one, so I'll just continue. I live on 1128 Cooper Avenue. The homeowner is Chris Samuelson. Some of you might know her. You know, I've heard a lot about fire evacuation, things like this. I've been here for 20 years and I've been around the world. I'm a gypsy. I've seen a lot. I've seen the development from New York. I've seen developments in Scarsdale. I've seen Berkeley. I've seen San Francisco. You're going to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. What I propose, right now, this is a difficult time with the COVID, all this development. We all know that West Glenwood, the mall is obsolete. We have a new one with all the retail space we ever need. The mall, something has to be done over there. I understand that. There's private property owners. They can do what they want. But we need a moratorium on development. We have, if you look at the development behind the new mall, those units that they put in behind there, they're nothing to write home to mom about. There's crappy roads. There's cars parked all over there. It's not good development. Here's a way to put it that you, people who are involved in property development and the American dream, might understand it. By cheapening what we have here, you're lessening your own property values. Sorry, I know someone just mentioned about I can't afford to live here anymore. Sorry, people can't afford to live in Aspen either. Our property values depend on keeping this exclusive. We don't need tourists anymore. We don't need to the city council. We don't need to spend millions of dollars on putting bricks down on 7th Street that are going to get ripped away by the snowplows, okay? We don't need to pander to tourists anymore. We are Aspen in and of itself. Our downtown core, that's why people come here, because of the hominess, the hometownness. We don't want to change anything. They spent millions of dollars developing that stuff with elevators and all this stuff, okay? We don't need to pander to tourists anymore. We are the Aspen, the Down Valley Aspen. Look at Carbondale. You're gonna cut the roots off your own feet. Your property values depend on keeping this town exclusive.
Please put your comments to the council.
You understand what I'm saying? I don't know how many of you are developers on here. Listen, These carpetbaggers from Cincinnati don't give a damn. Sorry, they don't care about your, listen, this is a philosophical discussion. Mr. William, I don't know, what are you trying to tell me? Okay, I hope you got my point. Moratorium on any development in this town for the time being, for a year. Keep it, no more development. That's it. That's it.
Next.
Russell Brown?
Thank you, Chief.
My name is Russell Brown, born in Glenwood Springs, live on 165 Vista Drive, that is in the city. I support what Garfield County Commissioner Mike Sampson said at a recent hearing on this project. He supports, and I quote, a coalition of groups, organizations, governments that could come together and work with the Demos family and to perhaps make a more beneficial area to the people that already live here and live there. I would even be in favor as a county commissioner to be a part of that, to work with the city, to work with the families, to work with the other groups. I think there would be a better solution for all of Garfield County, unquote. Perhaps his idea is something our city, our two partners, and the Demos family could consider in deliberations about what will happen next. Sometimes big is not the answer. And I think the project's a little oversized for what we have to offer. Now, on a personal note, I live on Vista Drive. We deal with Donegan on a daily basis, and I think I can speak for everybody on Vista. We put our lives on the line every morning when you go to pull out onto Donegan, because we have a blind corner. We have had the engineers up there this week, actually, and they agree we have a bad situation. But the situation isn't just a blind corner. The situation is the traffic, and the traffic that will not slow down. Now, you're not going to slow these people down either. And as you're adding all of this and an entrance, which is just terrible to enter onto Donegan when it can go to 6, and they own the property in front if they're buying them all, then they can go out that way on 6. That's the answer to that problem. But if you pump them out on Donegan, and they're going to use Donegan as the raceway, most of you, in fact, I don't think any of you live on Donegan. You got to go drive it in the morning and find out. Those people, it's a race car. Everything's racing down through there, going to town. The cops do not go down there. Very, very seldom I've seen a cop down there. It's a dangerous road, and you're going to add more people to it. You approve a project of this size. I think the project's terribly oversized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
That's all I have.
Does anyone wish to speak that has not signed up? Speak up.
Hi, my name is Carlo Uehara, and I live up on Creekside Court, so it's just outside the city limits, up there in West Glenwood. My wife Annie spoke earlier. I was just thinking, just listening to different comments and everything. I don't have a prepared statement. There are some things that just came to mind. I think it's admirable that we're talking about community and so forth. But of course, we've been talking about size of project and density and things like that. I know from just on a personal note, it's hard for me, who's lived here in Glenwood Springs for 10 plus years, that, seeing, empty stores on Grand Avenue, empty parks around town. So, I understand the community aspect and getting people around. There are definitely a lot of issues that we've been talking about here. Water is obviously a huge issue. I was also seeing the architectural renderings and how most of those renderings are coming from, talk about a minimal impact, yet all those shots or renderings are coming from, a second story. And so standing down there right on Donegan, you're not going to see Red Mountain. The pictures that Annie distributed before that have to do with the 111 fire, That was obviously an emergency situation, which we've all talked about, but that's literally gonna happen every day, twice a day, because although you can talk about a little bit of widening roads and sidewalks and things like that, all it's going to do is going to get people right to the roundabout, and from there, every pathway is just going to be a parking lot. So that part of the infrastructure, as I see it, is fairly lacking. Vehicle density, parking density. My understanding is that the number of cars and parking spaces they're well outside what's actually planned for the development. I mean, like personally, I'm lucky enough that I have a company car that I drive every day. So I also have personal cars. So that means they're kind of all over the place. When we have that many people that are going to be around, of construction traffic, people are driving, work vehicles and things like that. My understanding is a lot of the parking is planned for the street. Well, there's just not a lot of street there for that type of parking. I believe that it was talking about population density. There was something said about, I believe early on, that there were really no controls on what the population density was going to be. So how are there now? I also, fees in lieu of open space are kind of a problematic thing, because it really means that somebody's going to pay for them at some point. So that's all I have to say, but thank you very much for your time.
Oh, last chance in this room, and I'm going to make sure the other, okay, ma'am in the back. If there's anyone in the, hand, have you checked, nobody over there? Okay, thank you.
So if there are no more people signed up for tonight, does that mean that you're not gonna address it next week?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, we have at least one person who had requested interpretation services.
I think there's
And two other people who asked to speak next week.
Right. I mean, I think that what I would suggest if we get there is to have a limited amount of public comment on the fifth, recognizing that we've got 3 minutes for this, just because we want to make sure we can accommodate that.
That answered your question.
I'll go ahead and speak tonight.
Okay.
I was afraid if I didn't speak tonight, I wouldn't get through next week. My name is Sherry Tanazi. I live up Cedar Crest in West Glenwood. I share the concerns of all the other people. I agree with the P&Z and those issues. A couple of things that are important to me are the light pollution. I'm also imagining about 200 dogs in these facilities that will be walking and pooping all over the place. Those are a few things that haven't been mentioned. And then a great concern for me is senior housing. Nobody's brought up senior housing. A lot of people that have lived in this community a long, long time are leaving because they can't find a one-level home to live in as they age. And if there was more senior housing, we could move out of our big houses and sell them to people with families so that they can have a yard and a single-family home. So I think senior housing is a very important part of your what is needed in Glenwood Springs. And when he mentioned Mike Sampson talking about the coalition, that was my idea that I brought to the commission a couple weeks ago. And I think we can do better. I think we need to have a sustainable solution of people coming together and brainstorming about what would be best for our community. And I think the school district, maybe Aspen Valley Land Trust, the county, the city, Colorado Outdoors, if we could come together and do something really creative and imaginative and special with that piece of property, I think it's greatly needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There's one more person online, Sandy Haber.
Andy, you're there.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. You may proceed.
Okay. Yeah, I've been a homeowner in Glenwood Park for about 20 years now. Just a couple of comments. Somebody said that this is the only chance of mall redevelopment. I think that's very short-sighted, that this is the only chance, if I heard that correctly. And some people might find offensive what I'm going to say next, but Frank Woods is not getting any younger. someday his wife and 3 daughters or kids from other relationships are going to be inheriting the mall if nothing's done with it anyway. I believe Frank's got to be around 80 by now. There's lots of things that could be done that would benefit the area.
And Sandy, I'm going to just caution you. Talking about Mr. Woods individually is not part of this matter. It's not appropriate.
Well, I don't think that this is the only chance of the mall, of anything positive happening with the mall. I know that in the Florida Keys for many years, there was a building moratorium till they got a lot of things straightened out that needed to be done infrastructure wise. I see today in the newspaper that Eagle County has, I think, 5-point-something million that they're going to be incentivizing people to build ADUs and for low income housing, because what's considered affordable housing here isn't affordable. And this project is just another example of that. We've got the development that's going to be going in up South Blake, the development that wants to go up 4 Mile. There are lots of other places. If the catastrophe happens with taking away the airport, there's going to be more density out there. We have so many infrastructure issues citywide and countywide that need to be addressed. The biggest one I really think is the low income housing. There are a lot of legit people right now living in tents. The family from Carbondale that was featured in the newspaper some months ago. This is a real crisis. A lot of people that have HUD vouchers are going to be losing their vouchers because they can't be renewed anymore. There's going to be a huge number of homeless people come fall and winter, more than we had now. And some of these people have grown up here, have graduated high school here, have fallen on hard times. They're going to be homeless too. I just think this is a horrible project, and truly affordable housing needs to be addressed by the city and the county. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on the, all right. Last, not the last, but just anybody else want to speak tonight? It's here in this room or in the other room. So you understand, we're going to in a minute, we're going to continue this public hearing until next Thursday. From what Mr. Hanlon's indicated, we're going to have brief public comment. You will not be able to comment again if you've already commented tonight. We're only going to give you one chance at that. But if you want to comment next week, come prepared. I'm not sure exactly how long we'll do it. We want to make sure we get everybody a chance to comment. If you have written comments, make sure you send them to Trent Hyatt, the gentleman who's here represented from the staff, so we can make sure those get in our packet for next week. Anything else, Carl, I missed?
No, I think that pretty much covers it, Councilor Hershey.
Can I make a motion? I think that's appropriate to continue this hearing until August 5th, Thursday.
Yeah, that would be, to continue the public hearing, August 5th on both the annexation and the zoning. That would be
Motion made and a second to continue the public hearing to next week. Is there any opposition? All in favor, then say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. This meeting will be continued to the next city council meeting. City council meeting will start at 6:15. I think the hearing, as I saw in the preliminary agenda, is going to be later in the agenda. So.
Yeah, I was going to say there will be 3 or 4 items of regular business that we have to get through. So sometime probably after 6:30 or so, we'll be back to this.
I want to thank all members of the public for being here tonight, whether you participated in presented comments or not. We appreciate your feedback. We appreciate your time and your interest in the city. Thank you very much.